Well, ladies and gentlemen, with the debate now over, I thought it would be a good idea to give an update on Donald Trump's easiest path to victory here post debate and really just updating everything and seeing what is the easiest way Trump could potentially win this election. And I will be going through several different scenarios, but as you can see in this one, we've got, all the major swing states. I am giving Harris, and in this case right now, at least Virginia, because I don't think Virginia obviously is going to be part of Trump's easiest case. You could say, well, both Minnesota and Virginia are both toss ups, and that could be potentially the math right there. You've also got the districts that I've already filled in. Maybe I'll change those at some point. But either way, in this case, Minnesota is going to be hard for Trump to win. Virginia is going to be hard for Trump to win as well. So, what is the easiest path from 219 with all of these states? And really, I'm not even. The only thing you could say is maybe the one district in Maine Trump might lose, but really everything else should be, I would say, basically on auto lock for Trump. It would just be so surprising if he lost any of these states that I've already given him. He's at 219 right now. And so, where does the easiest path come from? Well, I would say it would probably be these three states on the eastern side. It would be Georgia, taking back Georgia. We know that Trump lost it. I think that was a pure aberration in 2020. I would be surprised if it happened again based off of the crazy amount of inner city vote, the mail-in vote that we're not expecting in 2024, the support that Brian Kemp has in Georgia, who's now on good terms with Trump. I think that's a state that Trump is going to eke out, and that is an SEC state, and it is a conservative state. And the only reason I went liberal is because it does have a major hub, Democratic city, Atlanta, and the surrounding suburban areas also went Democrat. But it was more so the amount of people that voted. They got a massive turnout. It wasn't that Trump lost the rural areas or Biden cut into his lead or anything like that. It was the crazy amount of people that voted, the ballot harvesting. I don't think it's going to happen nearly to the degree. They're already saying, oh, it's going to be a lower turnout election than 2020, which I would agree with. It'd be hard to beat it. So I would say Georgia would be very important for Trump in terms of the easiest scenario, just because it's 16 electoral votes and it is a traditionally Republican SEC state that Trump lost by 0.3% or 0.4%, whatever it was. You're also going to be including North Carolina. Now, I do know that there are some internal polls from Kamala Harris that they think that North Carolina could be easier than Arizona. So their potential strategy might revolve around more so North Carolina, possibly taking that state if they lose Arizona. But Trump has won North Carolina in both 2020 and 2016. The margin did go down by about 2% in 2016. He won it by like 3.5%. 2020, it was 1.3%. But the numbers in North Carolina, the voter registration is amazing. Republicans have gained around 300K in terms of that. Trump's numbers overall are so much more better than in 2020 or 2016, whether it be just polling numbers in general. Although North Carolina, their polls they've underestimated Trump by about 1.5 on average, but it's been pretty close in terms of where Trump was polling in 2020, 2016 versus where he is now, unlike states like Wisconsin, which are just crazy in terms of underestimating Trump. But it does seem like it's a state that, based off of the internal numbers we have on Trump with his approval rating versus Kamala's approval rating, with what he was able to do in 2020 and 2016 winning this state, it would be surprising now that he has better numbers in comparison to his opponent that he would now lose that state in 2024. Now, you can't say it's a lock because it's not like this is not a state where he won by 5 or 6 points in 2020. If that was the case, I'd say, yeah, he's definitely going to win it. And I do think Trump's going to win North Carolina based off of internal numbers, but it's one of those states where liberals, for sure, the reason they're flocking to it so much is because of the math, the election math, the electoral math, whatever you want to call it. Ohio and Florida, those used to be states where liberals would war game and say, well, we're going to take those states or we've got a chance. And especially Florida in 2020, they can't do that anymore. So that's 47 electoral votes off the table. They have to make new paths. So even a state that Trump's won in 2020 and 2016, they're going to magnify that state. It's very important for them to try and flip a state like that. They need to, because of the fact that Republicans have taken both Ohio and Florida off of the table. So I would say North Carolina is another state for Trump. You win it in 2020, you win it in 2016. Let's simplify it. He's got better numbers all across the board in 2024. You would think he would also win it in 2024, hopefully by multiple points, although it really doesn't matter whether he wins it by 0.3 or what, but you would want the win to be, at least high enough to where we could get the election decided on election night rather than prolonging it and dealing with that whole game and that whole charade Again, so that puts Trump at 251. So basically all of the lock states plus Georgia and North Carolina, which are states right now you could argue they're 50-50. I think Trump's the favorite in both. I think people would agree with me, at least in North Carolina. Maybe they'd say, liberals would say Georgia's a toss-up. But then the only other state Trump would really need is another state that he's polling relatively well in, and the internal numbers and all the voter registration looks amazing, and that would be Pennsylvania. And so that's 3 states, and that's an election win for Donald Trump already at 270. You can lose Michigan, you can lose Wisconsin, both of those states internally. Kamala Harris, their campaign has said they like both of those states, the way their internal numbers look, way more than Pennsylvania. And they're more bullish on those states than Pennsylvania, although we've gotten polls out of both Wisconsin and Michigan, especially Wisconsin, based on the error that we normally see, that are very bullish for Trump. Even Michigan, which recently was not great, there's been a few polls that have come out that are really good for him as well. So, I think Trump could very easily, probably will, sweep the Rust Belt. But even if it doesn't happen, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, and that's it. It's over. You don't need these 2 states out west, although a lot of people think Trump is going to win both of those states as well. You don't need either of the 2 Rust Belt states that maybe Trump isn't doing nearly as good in, at least the indicators say. But really, all you would need is these 3 states. Now, if Harris is able to hold serve in Georgia, although there are also reports that Harris, they feel more strongly about North Carolina than Georgia. Really, they're both 16 electoral votes. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, Harris is able to flip North Carolina, but Trump takes Georgia. Now Trump's at 254. Now, in terms of the easiest path, I would probably go out west, because I think right now, based on the dialogue in Arizona and Nevada, maybe even Arizona being easier to win than Nevada at this point, and that puts Trump at 271. And that would also not require either Wisconsin or Michigan. And that's why those 17 electoral votes, if Trump can win them, they're so huge, because now you've lost North Carolina, but you've still won the election without needing either Michigan or Wisconsin. So you've made it very easy on yourself if you can take those 17 electoral votes, because we know how hard it is in the Rust Belt. You just don't know. It's a few thousand votes. It's overall turnout here or there with mail-ins and things like that. You can lose North Carolina, that flips, as long as you're able to keep Georgia. Now, if Georgia also flips, you're probably going to need to sweep the Rust Belt in a scenario like that. Honestly, you would only need Michigan. So, this is kind of a weird, wonky thing, but in this case, just a crazy, situation. Trump loses both North Carolina and Georgia, but he's able to maintain and win Pennsylvania. He won it in 2016. He barely lost it in 2020. He wins the 2 states out west. And then he also takes Michigan without needing Wisconsin. He wins in that scenario. That's also giving him the district. But even if he's at 269, he wins because it goes to the House, and he would win in the House. If it is tied, Trump will win. So there are a lot of scenarios, but I would say the easiest ones, if you want to keep it simple, it's these 3. Georgia's a state he won in 2016. Pennsylvania's a state he won in 2016. The numbers look great. North Carolina's a state he won in 2016 and 2020, and the numbers look even better. And so it would really be those 3 states, and you wouldn't need a situation like, this is, I don't think it's very realistic, but I guess, this is a possible situation. Actually, I think this is what most people have it right now. Like, if you look at Kamala Harris and her internal people, this is probably where they have it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to pick off a North Carolina and a Georgia. I think those are the states they're probably really going to focus on. It's not like they've given up on Arizona, but they're saying that North Carolina and Georgia are going to be states that they have a better chance on than Arizona. Maybe they don't go out west very much. Maybe they focus on those 2 states, trying to flip those, and then they'll win the election if they're able to flip both of those. That would be with Trump taking Pennsylvania, but with Harris taking both Wisconsin and Michigan, which they feel more comfortable about. Now, the key here is there an under-the-radar state? I don't think it would be Minnesota, although the polls in Minnesota are relatively close. I do think it would probably be Virginia. And so if we just decide to clean all of this off and redo all the swing states, with Virginia now, you've got a completely different map. So let's say Trump with Glenn Youngkin and all the hype and Tulsi Gabbard, they do a big rally there. Let's say Trump wins Virginia by 1.5 points or something like that, which is possible, certainly, with the polls there. The Roanoke poll that had her only up by like 3 or 4. There's been a few other polls that have her up by 5. We'll still give Harris Minnesota, though, make it realistic. Although I'm not saying Trump can't win Minnesota. He's down by 4 or 5. Of course he can win it based on where we're at right now, a few months before the election. Or I guess now under 2 months before the election. But let's just say, so Trump's at 232 at this point. you've made it extremely easy by taking Virginia, right? Because now you've already got a 19 electoral vote lead and you've got the entire map to work with. And it's almost like they've given up Arizona and Nevada. You take both of those, you're at 249 now. Now you just need 20 electoral votes overall to win. So you would just need basically any of these two states in a combination to win. Let's say you take Pennsylvania. I mean, you could lose the Rust Belt very easily and win with Virginia. You take Pennsylvania, maybe you flip that second district, you win, you're at 269. And that's losing Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia. That's why Virginia, it's not like, oh, Trump needs to spend all the time there, but I'm just saying the path that it opens up is just crazy because let's just say you take that second district. Trump won that in 2016. He lost it in 2020 by a few points. It's the more liberal district. It's like gerrymandering for, the election, which, I mean, Trump can benefit from it too in Maine because Harris is probably going to win statewide Maine, but Trump might be able to take that one district. Although there was a poll that said she was leading that district. That's the district that Trump won in 2020. I mean, it's hard to say, oh, he's going to lose it or win it in 2024 just because it's a lower populated area. There's one poll, who knows? But this is why it's so important. He's at 269 and you're losing 4 different swing states here, but you still win. And I think those 2 states out west are key. But also, I mean, you talk about a trouncing. I mean, I think this is relatively realistic on what could happen, honestly. You get something like this. This would get Trump to 326. I think that's kind of a magic number for Trump. This would be like the ultimate best. No, I wouldn't be the ultimate best case. I could get Trump to around 340, but like realistically, this would probably be best case. It's just flipping Virginia. I mean, you could also say, well, also Minnesota, which is true. I mean, that is also possible. That would be 336. But just in general, I would say the easiest path, if you just talk about Minnesota going to Harris, you talk about Virginia going to Harris, which is likely, potentially Wisconsin, potentially Michigan, this would be the easiest path. You could even give her both of these states and Trump still wins the election. That's just taking 3 swing states. Also losing New Hampshire, which we're kind of disregarding. We're also disregarding New Mexico, which is a potential. And they're smaller electoral votes, they are, but they can matter if you're talking about getting Trump over the hump. If he's able to, win some of these states, get to like 268, you take a New Hampshire or a New Mexico or New Hampshire, you win. But those states I would not certainly imagine would go to Trump. But that's one of those like election night surprises. He's trailing by 4 or 5. Nobody really thinks it's going to happen. I mean, to be fair, I never thought a Democrat would win Georgia in 2020. And we can say what we want about that. I think without COVID, there's 0 chance it's even close. It's probably a 5 or 6 point Trump victory. But that's one of those things where it's like, well, Trump will never win Minnesota. He'll never win Virginia. And then it's like on election night, it's a shocker that he wins it. That I'm kind of getting the vibes like that with Virginia, honestly. Like Trump's going to win Virginia, honestly. You can kind of just see it playing out with Youngkin winning in 2021 and all of the stuff, the internal approval numbers being horrible for Kamala Harris in the state of Virginia. It was just one poll, but still, it's very bullish in terms of that. So there are a lot of paths, but I would say Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. If you lose one of those states, if you're able to take Virginia, that would be great. But ideally, you would just take more Rust Belt states or a combination of Arizona and Nevada because that's 17 electoral votes. You could offset losing one of these states with the 2 states out west, like by taking these 2 states and you offset it and you still win. You lose Georgia, but you still win and you keep North Carolina. So there's many different paths. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.